Now, yesterday I was talking about this Netflix doco, A Man with 1,000 Kids, which is sort of the next doco that is pinned to be taking off. Everyone is watching it in disbelief about a Dutch man who has basically been going around the world donating as much of his sperm as possible in what can only appear as a bit of a God complex, where he's trying to create as many kids as he can. Now, he says he's doing everybody a great favour because he's bringing joy to the lives of people who couldn't ordinarily have children, but they now believe that these kids have somewhere in the vicinity of about 900 siblings.
Unreal.
And they're quite concerned about what that means moving forward in terms of genetic lines and incest, etc. So we've got a guy here in Perth who's actually started a Sperm Donation Australia Facebook page and a website, and was doing this for a little while, helping families have babies. We saw him in the news a couple of years ago, and we've got him on the line now.
His name's Adam Hooper, and he joins us now. Thank you for your time, mate. Are you Australia's version of the guy from A Man with 1,000 Kids?
Nah, unfortunately, mate, I'm a quality over quantity sort of donor, where I think you could see in that show there was not a lot of screening going on by Jonathan, who he helped.
Now, Adam, how do we screen? This seems like a pretty unregulated industry. If you can just go on Marketplace or go on Craigslist or whatever and go, who wants sperm? I've got some. It doesn't seem... This seems like it can be pretty uncertain, like how many people out there are spreading their seed. Like, you were donating yourself. How many children have you fathered?
Look, I've helped about 20 families over, 10 years. So, I'm averaging 2 or 3 families that I handpick that, that I come across. So for me, it's not like Jonathan helping, 3 or 4 people per week to that extensive level. But we've got to remember, Jonathan was donating at the time back in 2000, the early 2010s, where there was only like 10 donors worldwide at that stage. So pretty much it was like Beatlemania. He did a post and there was women fighting over him saying, I'll fly you here and I'll sleep with you and all that sort of stuff. And, it was no surprise back then the demand that he was getting.
I need to just come back to that question that Kymba mentioned before. I mean, you said 20 families, but didn't quite answer how many kids. How many kids have you fathered?
Yeah, well, look, they're not trophies, mate. We don't use them as notches in our belt, so I don't.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just curious as to what the exact number is.
Well, if I've helped about 20 families, and let's say half of them have had siblings, then you may be looking about 30. But I mean, look, let's not get into those sort of numbers, because these kids these kids are people.
Well, they are people, but obviously in the context of what we're talking about, I mean, just sort of saying 30-something kids or 20-something families, I mean, that is, they do have your genetic line, and the thing is that, like, some of these places might be quite small. So I guess if those families aren't telling their kids that they're donors, that they come from a donor or anything, like, how do we regulate that, where you don't know that these kids aren't going to hook up with each other in the future? Or, like, there's a story online today of a girl who's found out that her parents never told her that she was the product of a donor. Her biological father is not who she thought. She did a DNA test, and she found out she had been having a sexual relationship with her brother for years. They were dating in her late teens.
Yes, that's very correct. And look, that's why we do it online. That's why you meet the people that you want to help. You see what their views on incest are. I've got a Facebook group where all the mothers are a part of. So unless they're choosing to purposely do incest with each other, it's very unlikely to happen. I'm not sure what your Christmas parties are like, but no one tries to get jiggy with it at mine.
Now, look, Adam, I can imagine that the interviews that you've done previously, because I sort of get this feeling a little bit at the moment, you've had to go on the defensive quite quickly because people have probably come after you. I just want you to know we're not here to attack you. So we're genuinely interested and curious, and we're just asking the questions. So just for that perspective, now for me as a father of 3 kids, I had my 3 and that's it, I'm done. And the reason why I'm done is because I feel a connection to these kids that is so powerful and personal, because they are my kids, that I couldn't ever imagine giving my sperm to somebody else for them to have a kid, and then for me to be able to wipe my hands of that relationship, or even have an arm's length relationship with that family. How do you manage that with 30 plus kids?
Well, we have group get-togethers every 3 or 4, 6 months, depending on the season. where the mothers come and the children come. We all have like a lunch or a barbecue, and the kids go off and play with each other. It's important for these children to grow up knowing that they're not conceived and to have that support network there. Look, and for me, it was the opposite. I don't think I could have been a donor if I hadn't had children, if I didn't know the gift that I had and watched grow up under my own house and seeing these children grow up. That how special it was to know how special this gift I was giving to people that were, going to be good parents.
So you're able to separate in your mind the difference between they're your kids and they're not your kids?
Yeah, well, look, I couldn't donate at a clinic anonymously like some of these donors do, where that's complete disconnect, where they don't know what type of families are, picking them off a piece of paper. For me, I have to be very comfortable in who I help. And, there is a bit of like a selection criteria and getting to know them and being comfortable with that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I think that this doco will certainly frighten a lot of people, and be to know that it is such an unregulated kind of industry when people would expect it to be the opposite. I think people thought this would be something that would be very highly monitored, and it doesn't appear that it is. So I think, I respect you'll probably get some backlash just being someone who has donated, even though we recognise the gift that you're giving to families who are unable to have children. So could be a tough one. I think that there's probably still plenty of questions in it, but we really appreciate your time, Adam.
Yeah, I think we've got to remember is Netflix is a documentary and also an entertainment industry. And, Patricia's come out now and said that Jonathan didn't run that website and that whistleblower was Paul, who, he's been banned from many websites like Pride Angel and that for the way he's conducted himself. He hasn't got a great reputation in there. And the Kenya thing was quite made up as well. So, look, why it was sort of perked our interest and all that sort of stuff. I think the main message in all this is Jonathan lied. He told families that they were only the third family. When in fact, they were like 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever stage he was up to at that time. And, you've got to be transparent with people. They can't go into it thinking that there's only going to be 3 other families if there's going to be 20 other families. And that's
I guess that's where you see yourself as different. You're fully transparent.
You've got to be honest, yes.
All right, Adam Hooper from Sperm Donators Australia, thank you very much. Fathered roughly 30 kids to, 20-odd different families. I got to admit, I feel like we're only just scratching the surface of this because I don't. This just sounds like there's so much more to it.
It's to me, it's that thing where you're like, this is the kind of industry. He's right. We're relying on people to just be honest. I mean, has the honor system worked in our lives? What are people honest about?
No, like I said,
Ever.
just scratching the surface.